Right, it's 5:15 and it's nearly 18 degrees, but I've got my window open as I've had dinner. It was cabbage and it was quite smelly, so I've cracked the window open. I had a stir fry. I was gonna do gammon, but then Mumsy popped round. She said, "Oh, I got you some sausages." So I thought, "Oh, okay, I'll have the sausages, and then the gammon can go in a sandwich tomorrow, which will be nice." As I had my dinner yesterday was a toasted baguette with slices of gammon inside it, and oh yeah, hot crispy bread with ham is quite nice. Very nice. Now, as you may notice, that's see-through again. There was a cloth there, which was just an old rag that I'd used to clean it up, but it is now burnt, so I guess there were some embers. Yep, speaking of embers, I think it may be another Talking French Day coming up soon, but we shall see, we shall see. Main thing is, I need to get a fire going and I need to get some bits of wood on, so yeah. Right, is that going to be enough to get going? Let's find out. Oh, it has a safety, right? Okay, well, take the safety off. I've never had a lighter with a safety on it before. It's one of those superfluous features which is nice to have but not essential. Well, it did confuse me for a bit there. If you're wondering, this thing, what I've got here, which is very well looked after, as you can see, is a knife sharpening rig, and that piece of wood is a bed slat. As you can see, there's the old screw hole, and I gave it. Did I give it a bevel? No, that's right. So this edge, I put a bevel on it. This bevel already existed. And my hands are getting covered in baby oil now that I'm handling this, but as you can see, there's some screws. What I sanded off these screws. Gosh, hot shingles in your area. So it's a knife sharpening rig, and to begin with, it's all practically unusable. So as you can see, I've put rubber grommets either side so that it retards the it arrests, I should say. It doesn't retard, it arrests the total amount of travel it can do. You put your sharpening stone in there, and you sort of put your knife in there, or if you've got scissors, you put it in there. And I've put a big magnet there, but frankly, for most knives, it's not useful enough. Although I have changed my technique now, so I don't actually apply any pressure when sanding. I just use like my little pinky finger when I'm doing polishing. But for the actual sharpening itself, I do apply some pressure on it, and that's when I'll go down to about 300 grit. I do have a 180 grit one, which is very rough, but that's only if you're going to put a new edge on something. That's not really a good idea if you've got something with an existing edge on, like all my knives have. And I've in terms of stones, I've got up to 1800 grit, and then I have a 2000 and 2500 diamond grit, but those are on a piece of steel with some very cheap rubber adhesive to hold it onto the plastic frame underneath. So with those ones, I ended up just doing it by hand freely, and then what happens? And then I just glide it over, and I end up with a very polished blade, which even on... Have I ever... I don't think I've shown knives on these streams. I get a feeling that those sorts of cookery videos are deemed not family friendly, because what do you need knives for? Just get your Tesco ready meal and stick it in a microwave, and I don't have ready meals and I don't have microwaves, so I can't do either of those. I have to chop ingredients to make mine. But anyway, point being, most knives you get are made of stainless steel, which is a very practical alloy of steel for the kitchen. My favourite knife, however, is not stainless. It's made of carbon steel, and because of that, it's very dull. It's lackluster. It's not dull. It's quite sharp, but the edge, I mean, for a few days after I've polished it, it shines and then it oxidizes, but it cuts better than anything else I've got. And it's not an expensive knife, by the way. You can spend silly money on knives which are worse, but I just have an Opinel. And if you look for Opinel folding knife, I mean, I know they've done like 100 different varieties of knife, but they're all the same principle of it's a knife in a handle. I also have an Opinel chef's knife, and I like that because it's full tang. I've had knives before made out with cheap plastic handles, and I'm not opposed to cheap plastic handles, by the way. But what I am opposed to is half tang knives in a cheap plastic handle, because you put a bit of pressure on it, say you're trying to cut through bone or sweet potato, and suddenly your knife has just popped out of the plastic because it only goes in about 5mm, if that, which is rubbish. So if you get a full tang, you're holding on to a piece of steel with a handle wrapped around it, and that's far more mechanically sound. Not strictly necessary, but considering the cost of steel, why wouldn't you make a knife that way? I mean, so some knives, you've got like the handle is made out of steel and that, but I've seen those knives, they're two pieces. I can see a seam between the blade and the handle. So I'm thinking to myself, if you're going to make one, why not mill it? Have a piece of milled steel. But you know, I think a wooden handle is a good way of doing it. I like wood as a material. Speaking of which, I need to get some logs. And we return to another exciting fire video with some logs. What is it? Oh, something in that spot. Can I? I think I can separate this. Look. Hey. Just a minute. Yes. Right. That's going to join the kindling pile. If I put this bit of wood there, like so, and then can I pick that up with my bare hands? Yes, although that probably wasn't sensible, that was painful. I think the question shouldn't really be, can I do something? It really ought to be a case of, ought I to do this? And in the case of, shall I pick up this still burning ember? No, is the answer. It's physically possible to pick up a burning ember, but it's inadvisable. Yeah. But anyway, knives, knife sharpening. I've got knives. Do you have knives? You can tell me about your knives if you want. I'm probably not interested. Unless it's genuine Damascus steel where the ore's been taken from that mine in Jordan, which has got the traces of, is it molybdenum and vanadium? There's like a few parts per million of vanadium or something in it, which gives it some unique elastic properties which make it a very good steel. I also heard something about the iron ingots, Wutzt, I think it was called, that used to make the Damascus steel. They were done in these fires where they'd wrap these palm fronds around them, and apparently when they charcoalized, when they turn to charcoal, those fibres then make like a carbon nanotube lattice on them, which theoretically it's possible because carbon 60 was originally discovered in soot. And they're saying, oh, well, it then becomes a composite material with a carbon tube lattice structure. I'm thinking to myself, I'm dubious about that. But at the same time, I'm not so skeptical about, oh, well, you've got a few parts of mammalian, chromium, vanadium, molybdenum, magnesium. I don't remember the exact mineral analysis for the Damascus steel iron. But they're saying these tiny parts per million make all the difference, and some top metallurgists around the world saying, yep, that will do it. That's the cause of it. So yeah, I'm not really interested in knives. Most of them, they're just like their form over function. So I like Opinel. They make good quality knives. They don't charge silly money for it. I'm sure there are better knives available. I'd hope if you're paying like $500 for a knife, then you're getting good quality. Especially if you're getting one made by a blacksmith, and he's really good at putting an edge on it, and gives you advice on saying, well, look, I can make out of this alloy, and then it'll blunt easily, but at the same time you only need to give it a few swipes to get it sharp. Or I'll make you this knife and it's really hard, and you're gonna need to spend like an hour and a half sharpening it again, but it'll hold its edge for months. But apart from that, it's like saying there's like Rolls Royce and Ferrari cars available, or Aston Martins. Like, yeah, they're nice cars, and you'd expect so for the money. But then you can buy an old Jag, and it's not silly money, and it's very nice. Goodbye.